Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Shilpa Data Insights. In this video, we are going to discuss about the most frequently asked questions in Databricks Associate Engineer Examination. This is in continuation of Databricks certification playlist. In the previous video, I explained about the exam overview and its syllabus. If you have not watched that video, then you can watch that first and come back to this particular video. I have pinned the previous video in the I bar. So let's get started. Which of the following benefits does Delta Life Table provide for ELT pipelines over standard data pipelines that utilize Spark and Delta Lake on Databricks? Read out the option, guess which could be the answer, then I will explain you the answer for this particular question. So in this, if you will see what is the benefit the Delta Life Table over the ETL pipeline, okay? So in this, Delta Life Table are basically a declarative language, right? So in this, basically you can go ahead and declare and maintain the data table dependencies. This is the main advantage of Delta Life Table. So this is the correct answer. You can write the pipelines in Python and SQL in both ELT and Delta Life. You can access your previous version also. You can scale the compute resources in both of the cases, and you can perform batch and streaming in both the cases also, right? So that is not the benefit. The benefit is the declarative language that we have. Let's move on to the next question. A data engineer has 3 method notebooks in an ELT pipeline. The notebook needs to be executed in a specific order for the pipeline to complete successfully. The data engineer would like to use Delta Life tables to manage this process. Which of the following steps must the data engineer take as a part of implementing this pipeline using Delta Life Table? Certification is assuming that you know about Delta Life Tables, you have worked on Delta Life Tables, how exactly it's different from the ELT pipeline, and what all features are there in Delta Life Tables, right? From where exactly you can use the Delta Life Tables. In this example, if you will see, this Delta Life pipeline doesn't reside in data page, which is not correct. It doesn't reside in compute page. In this compute page, the clusters are present. In this data page, the data are present. Unity catalog is present. They need to refactor their notebook to use SQL and create not required. So the correct answer in this particular question will be B, because the Delta Life Table pipeline from the jobs page. So let's move on to the next question. A data engineer has written the following query. The data engineer asks a colleague for help to convert this query for use in Delta Life Table pipeline. The query should create the first table in DLT pipeline. Which of the following describes change the colleague needs to make the query? So basically this query is not a Delta Life Table pipeline that is being used in. So you need to convert this particular query into Delta Life Table pipe. So how you can do that? So let me go ahead and go to the Databricks documentation for this. So if you will see in the documentation here, it says create a refresh live table. The table name. In this, you need to make sure it has the keyword refresh live table with your columns and the data type, and then you have as select start from. So let's go back to our question. A option says they need to add a comment line at the beginning of the query. It's not required. They need to add a create live table name as line at the beginning of the query. This seems to be correct. They need to add a live dot prefix prior to json.info line. This is not required. They need to create a Delta Live table name as line. No, it doesn't require the delta keyword, right? It only requires the live keyword as we saw it in the documentation. Now, they need to add the cloud files wrap to the JSON. No, not required. So they need to create a live table basically keyword. A data set has been defined using Delta Live tables and include the expectations clause. What is the expected behavior when a batch of data containing the data that violates these constraints is processed? So basically, when you have the Delta Live table, it has given you some constraint, right? It says it cannot be greater than a timestamp which is mentioned here. So there are different ways how you can mention the constraint with the expect keyword. Okay, so let's go to the documentation. And so if you will see, the expectation consists of 3 things, right? One is description, boolean, and an action. So by default, the expectations are what, right? Here what happens is that invalid records which doesn't meet the constraint are written to the target, and the failure is actually reported as the metric for data set. So you get the data into your target table, but still you have some reported failure of your data set as a metric. Then you have the drop. So basically the invalid records are dropped before the data is written and the failure is marked. So here if you will see, it has a default thing. By default it is basically 1. Okay, so in this one, what it says, records that violate the expectation are added to the target data set and recorded as invalid in the event log. Okay, so the first option itself is correct that you will see, right? But let's see what are the rest of the option. It says records that violate the expectation are dropped from the target dataset and recorded as invalid in the event log. They are not actually dropped. When you have a drop, then it is actually dropped. Then records that violate the expectations cause the job to fail. No, when you have a fail, it actually does the fail. Records that violate the expectation are added to the target dataset and flagged as invalid in a field added to the target dataset. No, it doesn't add as a field. It is actually as an event log, basically. Then records that violate the expectations are dropped from the target dataset and loaded into quarantine table. Not correct. So the right answer for this is the option A, question number 35. A Delta Live table pipeline includes 2 datasets defined using streaming live table. 3 datasets are defined using Delta Lake table sources using live table. The table is configured to run in development mode and using the triggered pipeline mode. Assuming previously unprocessed data exists and all definitions are valid, what is the expected outcome after clicking the start to update the pipeline? So which of the options do you think is the right answer? Think for it. It is just 1 second I will give you. Then I will explain you what could be the answer for this particular question. In this question, if you will see, it says it is in the development mode and using the triggered pipeline mode. So there are 2 modes that is available in Databricks. First is our triggered and the second is basically the continuous mode. In the triggered mode, basically all the data sets are updated at once, but the compute resources that you have is actually not terminated, okay, because it is in the development mode. Then in the continuous pipeline mode, basically it will not terminate any resource and it will continue do it like kind of a streaming kind of a thing. So the first option says a data set will update once and the pipeline will shut down. Okay, the pipeline will shut down, the compute resource will be terminated. No, the compute resources are actually not terminated in this case because it is in development mode. Now all datasets will be updated at set intervals until the pipeline is shut, and the compute resources will be deployed for update and terminated. This is also not correct. And if you will see here, you have additional testing, but at set intervals, not at set interval. Trigger pipeline can be done at one go only. So this is not correct. If we go ahead and see the option D, it is updated at once, which is correct, and the pipeline will shut down, which is correct. But the compute resources will persist allow for additional testing. This is correct. So now if I see the next option also, it update continuously. No, it cannot do an update continuously because it can be done continuously in the continuous mode and not in the triggered mode. So the option D is correct for question number 36. Let's move on to the next question, 37. A data engineer has a job with multiple tasks that runs nightly. One of the tasks unexpectedly fails during 10% of the runs. Which of the following action can the data engineer perform to ensure job completes each night while minimizing the compute cost? In this particular question, basically it evaluates your skill, whether you know how to do a monitoring of the job, right? Whether you know how to actually schedule your jobs, whether there are retry policies that you are aware of in case of jobs and tasks, right? So the things that you need to focus on here is one of the tasks only fails and that fails during 10% of the run. And you want to make sure that the job completes, and you need to minimize the compute cost as well. So the first option is they can institute a retry policy for the entire job. Okay, so now in this particular question, you don't have to do a retry policy for the entire job, because it will start the 10% that actually ran, it will again start running from the entire, let's say there are 4 tasks in a particular job, right? And this particular fourth task actually fails, right? So you have to run the complete T1, T2, T3 and T4 basically in the option A in order to go ahead and come to this T4 again. If let's say this takes 1 hour of time, this takes 1 hour, T3 takes 1 hour and T4 1 hour, all the 3 hours of data job you have already done. You are doing it again if you are retrying the entire job. So this option is not correct. Then you have, they can observe the task at its run. So you have to basically sit for all the 3 hours, and then you have to also observe this T4 task, whether it is failing or not. And if it is failing, then you are retrying. No, not at all. Then they can set up the job to running multiple times. So here it is saying they can set up the job, here the complete job itself, they are saying to run it multiple times and see if at least one time it fails, right? So one time it fails, then it's fine. Like one time it should succeed. So all the 4 hours, let's say 4 hours multiplied by twice 8 hours of your time of the day is wasted in this, right? So this is also not correct. They can institute retry policy of the task that periodically fails, which is correct. You can just do a retry policy of this particular task, right? And it will go ahead and retry this and see if that particular thing succeeds. They can utilize a job cluster for each task. This also doesn't make sense for it. So option D is correct. If you like this video, then hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to share it with your friends who need it. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you have a good day.